let's reimpose our original racist restrictions. Let's only allow Europeans in, and maybe some Asians, the smart ones. Let's rearrange our immigration laws like that. Allow as many people as want to come, but only from with ethnic backgrounds that we prefer. If they would at least come right out and say that, it would be helpful, because then voters would understand what it was they were being asked to vote on. But with these, dog whistle and smoke and mirrors kind of techniques that they're doing, even a fairly racist, fairly overt and racist presentation like Trump still confuses people in terms of what it is he's trying to do with these acts. And so people will say, oh, well, we're just trying to stop illegal immigration, not this kind or not that kind. They by stigmatizing illegal and making it seem like that refers strictly to people who are sneaking over the border and coming in through the country, by making it seem like that's the problem, that's where we have to focus it on, you miss everything else, and you don't really fix anything. You could stop all border crossing in terms of, all unauthorized border crossing at once, and you still would not solve the immigration problem or even come close to it, because many, if not most of the people who are here illegally came here legally, but they overstayed their visa. Whatever they did, they became undocumented in different ways. And they would all still be doing that, and they would all still be here. So then you get Trump's, well, we're going to deport everyone that's here, and then they can come back if they, once they've gone over all that stuff. I mean, it's all nonsense, but it's all designed to confuse you and make you think it's about something other than what it is. Anyway, I don't want to go on and about that, but that's something to be aware of when you discuss this issue with people, particularly the the stereotypical, what is it, like the drunk uncle or whatever at the family gathering, who comes in, who's just like, and they're racist and they say all these crazy things, and you don't know how to argue with him, because their facts all come from totally unreliable sources. So they'll just spout out things like, 90% of illegals are criminals, and and Trump's, they're rapists, they're drug dealers, and some perhaps are good people, all that kind of stuff. It's hard to argue with that, because it's based on a reality that is not shared reality. It is a personal reality based on right-wing websites and talk radio and all these propaganda outlets that are designed to make you believe things, or to convince you to believe things that aren't really true, but that serve someone's political purpose. And right there, I think, in a sense, we kind of have where a lot of this stuff is coming from. I was reading an article recently where someone mentioned that the way that guns, the right to bear arms, the sense that freedom to buy guns and have guns and carry guns and all those things went from being a fairly specific sort of group of people, hunters and whatever. It has now become almost a de facto Republican Party, conservative, what's the word I'm looking for? Not milestone, but like a basic fundamental belief. And so even people that probably would previously not have wanted to own a gun or really thought it was a good idea for someone else to own a gun have been sort of forced by party loyalty, by partisanship, to embrace this Second Amendment, worship. I don't even know what else to call it. It's a worship of the Second Amendment and belief that somehow a well-regulated militia, the well-regulated militia part of the Second Amendment doesn't mean anything. It's just filler. It's the right of the people to bear arms. That's the whole thing. And the well-regulated, as a part of a well-regulated militia, is like, yeah, no, that's just, they were filling out space. It was, they didn't have enough characters to do their tweet or whatever. That somehow that is a basic belief in the Constitution is a belief that you must allow absolute and unfettered gun ownership, any kind of gun, doesn't matter, machine guns, armor-piercing bullets, exploding whatevers, this belief that you now have to embrace that has become part and parcel of partisanship, of party identity, I guess you could call it. And I thought that was an interesting point, and I started thinking about it. And it's like, yeah, over the last few years, that has gone from just sort of more conservative folks tended to be into that to everybody will at least argue the point with you now. If they call themselves a Republican, if they call themselves conservative, they will argue that point as if it was like a necessary. We cannot have gun control. We cannot restrict firearm ownership. We cannot do any of those things. We must have absolute freedom to own and use guns in this country. And, along with the freedom to own guns, that's where these laws like stand your ground laws, it's like, well, I've got a gun. I should be free to use it. And I should be free from prosecution if I do use it. It's like all progressing in that direction. And it has become sort of a faith, part of the faith. If you believe in the conservative faith, you believe this. And in a way, immigration is slowly moving in that direction too, if indeed it is not already there, to the point where if you identify as a conservative or a Republican, you believe in the right to bear arms and use them anytime you want to, and you believe that immigrants are invaders and we need to get rid of immigrants and defend our country against people coming here. I mean, it is becoming an act of faith to oppose immigration reform, to oppose any accommodation of people that are here and have been here, even to the ridiculous extent of opposing dreamers. I mean, think of this. A kid is born here. Well, a kid is born here as a citizen, okay? Well, I mean, there you go, right there. They're opposing birthright citizenship. Like, oh, but if your parents are undocumented, then you should not have the right to be a citizen of this country just by being born here. I mean, it's gone that far. What I was gonna talk about were dreamers, brought here as infants, let's say. They spent their whole life here. They were raised here. They, in every possible way you can think of, they are as much a citizen as someone who was born on this country, except that they lack that birth certificate of having been born in the United States. And that, to me, seems like the absolute outside ridiculous extreme that you could oppose that. And yet, they're going farther than that. They're going much farther and saying, no, you shouldn't even be a citizen if you're born here. Only if your parents are citizens should you be a citizen. I mean, that's like absolutely ridiculous. If you are born, the only thing that makes me a citizen is I was born in Champaign, Illinois, 1956. That's the only thing that makes me a citizen. I never took a test. I never. No one knows whether or not I'm a communist or a follower of ISIS or who knows what. I don't know. What else could I be? A socialist. I guess that's bad too, according to some people. No one knows that stuff about me, and they don't care because I was born in Burnham City Hospital, which is now, what is it, Covenant? Something like that. Actually, it's gone. They tore it down, but it's neither here nor there. Anyway, I was born there. I was born here, and that makes me a citizen. That's the only thing that makes me a citizen. And yet, in some parts of Texas, right now, they are denying birth certificates to children born here because the parents didn't have the right documents to show who they were, in a roundabout way to negate birthright citizenship. They're just doing it in the backdoor way, the same way that they, instead of, if you can't outlaw abortions, you can close down abortion clinics because they don't have a doctor in residence, or they don't have an operating room, or they don't have this. It's another way of achieving the same goal. But they're actually trying to, and in some instances, denying citizenship, or at least the documents needed to prove citizenship, to some people. That's a pretty intense thing to do, if you think about it. Because the only difference, like I said, I can prove that I was born in Champaign, Illinois. I have a copy of my birth certificate, which I had to actually work at to get. I'll have you know. It was not easy to find the proper document. But anyway, I have it, and that proves that I'm a citizen. If you don't have that, you're not one. And you could have been born here too. There should be no difference. It should absolutely be no difference. But somehow some people are actually seeing it that way. And it is all. I can say this. I can't prove it, but I can say it. It is all goes back to racist imaginings of who a preferred citizen should be versus someone that you would rather not have a citizen here. You don't want to share your country with this person, so you're trying to find a way to delegitimize them in some sense. And that's really, really creepy. Okay, I'm going to try another article here. This is sort of interesting. This is from Pew Research Center. It's entitled, Future Immigration Will Change the Face of America by 2065. A snapshot of the United States in 2065 would show a nation that has 117 million more people than today, with no racial or ethnic majority group taking the place of today's white majority, according to new Pew Research Center projections. About 1 in 3 Americans would be an immigrant or have immigrant parents, compared with 1 in 4 today. These projections show that new immigrants and their descendants will drive most U.S. population growth in the coming 50 years, as they have for the past half-century. Among the projected 441 million Americans in 2065, 78 million will be immigrants, and 81 million will be people born in the U.S. to immigrant parents. The projected changes in population makeup could have implications in a variety of realms, changing the face of the electorate, raising the education levels among the foreign-born population, and altering the nation's birth patterns. Non-Hispanic whites will remain the largest racial or ethnic group in the overall population, but will become less than a majority, the projections show. Currently 62% of the population, they will make up 46% of it in 2065. Hispanics will be 24%, 18% now. Asians will be 14%, 6% now. And blacks will be 13%, 12% now. The U.S. electorate already is more diverse than ever, and the projected demographic changes would produce a rising share of non-white potential voters. One important factor in the rising age of the second generation, people born in the U.S. to at least one immigrant parent, currently a large share is not yet eligible to vote. This group's median age is 19, measuring half are younger and half are older, but by 2065 their median age will be 36, according to the new projections. The projected rise of Asians as the nation's largest immigrant group has its own implications, among them potentially increased education levels. Among immigrants who arrived within the past 5 years, Asians already number Hispanics, in part because of a sharp recent drop in immigration from Mexico. This slowed Hispanic immigration also will have a longer-term impact. In 2065, Asians will outnumber Hispanics among all immigrants, 38% to 31%. Today, those shares are 26% and 47%. The increased share of Asian immigrants among all immigrants means that education levels of the foreign-born population could rise sharply, because Asian immigrants tend to be better educated. Among recent immigrants from Asia, for example, 57% have completed college, compared with 13% for recent Mexican immigrants, and 28% for immigrants from other Central or South American nations. The rise of the Asian share of the immigrant population also could have implications for the political debate about immigration over the next 50 years. Americans today have mixed views about the impact of immigrants on society, but tend to have more favorable views of Asian and European immigrants than other groups, according to a recent Pew Research survey. That's what I was saying. The survey also found that most Americans, 56%, would prefer giving priority to immigrants who are highly educated or highly skilled, compared with 37% who favor giving priority to those with family in the U.S. And editorial break here. One of the arguments against immigrants is that they take our jobs. You hear this all the time. These people are coming here taking our jobs. 56% of those surveyed would prefer giving priority to immigrants who are highly educated. What do you think they're going to do when they get here? They're going to get a job. Whose job will that be? Well, if it's someone coming here to pick strawberries or work in a canning factory or something like that, that supports the the stereotype that immigrants do jobs that Americans don't want, because that's kind of what's going on there. But if these people are highly educated, they're going to be taking your job as a doctor, as a lawyer, as an engineer, as a computer technician, as a programmer. What I see here is a lack of deep thinking. The whole they come and take our jobs thing is really based more around factory owners, employers, corporations, people who would like to blame the lack of jobs, the lack of good jobs, the lack of pay, all those things. They'd like to blame someone else so that you don't blame them. What they don't want is you realizing that you're losing your job because your boss doesn't want to make, the company's making less money, your boss doesn't want to make any less money, so he has to fire somebody down the rung in order to make sure that his paycheck stays the same, and the company does the same, but it pays less. So it's greed of owners that means less jobs in many instances. So I guess maybe it's only fair that these people just can't quite see it well enough to realize that if they give high priority to immigrants who are highly educated, their job is more likely to go away than some other mythical job that they're talking about foreigners taking away from them, like yard work and field work and that sort of thing. I don't know, it's very strange. Anyway, I will continue. The poll also found that about half of Americans, 49%, would like immigration levels decreased, and that is something that may happen anyway, according to the projections. Although immigrants are projected to be a record 18% of the population in 2065, the foreign-born population will be growing more slowly in 50 years than it has recently. From 2055 to 2065, the immigrant population is projected to rise by 9%, compared with 17% from 2005 to 2015, which was markedly lower for the growth of more than 40% of each of the 3 preceding 10-year periods. The projections also show a change in birth patterns, with a continuing dip in average lifetime births to Hispanic women and a slight rise in average lifetime births to Asian and white women. Today, average lifetime births to Hispanic women are markedly higher than to other groups, but the projection shows that in 2065, Hispanics, whites, blacks, and Asians would have similar fertility rates. Overall, the U.S. fertility rate would be about the same as it is now, with the average woman having slightly less than 2 children. So does that mean if you're an average woman, you'll have like 1.5 children? That's always just sounds funny the way they put that. I know, I'm in a silly mood today. I'm sorry. That's not the most serious show. These trends reflect Census Bureau assumptions about birth patterns. The projections are based on assumptions about birth, death, and immigration rates that are built on recent trends, but those trends can change. Moreover, any projections have built-in uncertainties, especially for years further in the future. So that's kind of interesting. So the trend is continuing the way it has been continuing. And maybe what we're seeing here with the anti-immigrant sentiment on the rise is more that it's an anti-immigrant sentiment in a certain group of people who really want to keep things the way they have been and are really uncomfortable with the way things are going. I don't know. Anyway, I guess I should tell you, we're rapidly approaching the end of our show. You are listening to CU Immigration here on WRFU-LP Urbana, 104.5 FM. I am a very hoarse, very dry-throated person who did not bring anything to drink. Yeah, okay. I'll take the last few minutes to just talk about this because this, very irksome. Okay, this was an article, I've read a number of things about this. This is entitled, Texas Mom Calls Out Textbook Company for Calling Slavery Immigration and Slaves Workers. This is absolutely true. It happened. It is happening now. Okay. Texas mom Ronnie Dean Burren took to YouTube to call out book publishing giant McGraw-Hill after she opened her son's world geography textbook and noticed a slight change in history. In the section titled Patterns of Immigration, Dean Burren noticed that the transatlantic slave trade was considered immigration and that slaves were referred to as workers. The Atlantic slave trade between 1500s and 1800s brought millions of workers from Africa to the southern United States to work on agricultural plantations. That is an actual quote from the book. I'm going to read it again. The Atlantic slave trade between the 1500s and 1800s brought millions of workers from Africa to the southern United States to work on agricultural plantations. Strictly true, I suppose, but very, very slanted in the way that it comes across when you read it. She also noted that in another section of the book, it clearly states that many European immigrants were indentured servants who worked for little or no pay. So they say that about English and European people, but there is no mention of Africans working as slaves or being slaves. It just says we were workers, she said. Dean Burren pointed out several professional consultants in the Texas Advisory Board are listed in the front of the book and supposedly signed off on the book's text. Fortunately, on a positive note, after you digest that and go, what? Are you kidding me? On a positive note, McGraw-Hill took to its Facebook page to acknowledge the mistake, adding that it would fix it in the digital version and the next print run of the book. So this stuff, the Atlantic slave trade between the 1500s and 1800s brought millions of workers from Africa to the southern United States to work on agricultural plantations. So you could notice that little word slave up near the beginning and infer all sorts of things from it and understand what was actually going on there. Or you can just kind of breeze by it as you're reading and just go, okay, 1500s, 1800s, millions of workers from Africa. Okay. So that's what slavery is, or was, for some people, apparently. Slaves were immigrants, and slavery was working. Yep. So on that note, I think I will call it a day, because what else can I say after I'm reading that? Oh, it's just one thing after another here. Well, anyway, we talked a little bit about immigration, a little bit about the history of CU immigration, and a little bit about what's going on and kind of why there seems to be this solid body of people who oppose immigration and are resistant to understanding anything different about it. It's because it has gone beyond, and I think this is intentional. It has intentionally been pushed beyond the point where people can feel that they can have their own opinion about it and still be part of the group. So now it's been pushed by so many people on one side that it's now official dogma of the conservative side to oppose immigration and reform, to oppose immigrants. And I think that is one of many signs of how awful the polarization and tribalization, if I can call it that, of political parties has become. It has become this thing where if you are liberal, you believe this, 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 and this. And if you're conservative, you believe this, 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 and this. And you don't, it's not like a smorgasbord anymore. You can't say, well, I am a conservative person. I believe that we should make change slowly and cautiously and consider our options before we change things too much, because it's okay the way it is, but it might be bad if we do it differently. We should conserve our money and spend it carefully, and that's what, to me, being a conservative is. And what being a liberal would be is being a little more adventurous, a little more like, let's try this and see if it works. This would be good for everybody, so it's worth going out on a limb. Let's get into a little debt here and spend this money on this thing because I think it's a good idea. It's being a little more young and adventurous. It's kind of, think of a conservative as an older person who's a little more cautious, like, let's think about this before we go ahead. And a liberal as being a little more like, hey, let's just do it. That, I think those are two good political parties. I think that's a good creative tension between those two urges right there.